Miles, mate, England 3, Italy 1. We've qualified. Was it ever in any doubt? We were doubted it, weren't we? That's for sure. We've had a couple of sluggish England games prior to this, but 3-1 against Italy didn't flatter England at all, did it? I really enjoyed the game, especially the second half.
Yeah, I think they came out firing in the second half, and that made a huge difference. The first half was a bit cagey, kind of what we've seen of England over the last few games, but a few individual performances that kind of carried them over the line in the end. A few players that really stood out, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And actually, this feels like a really important result for England because it's not just about qualification. It's top in the group. It's beating an opponent who is a bit more fancied, even though Italy aren't in their greatest moment. So yeah, it's a good win for England, definitely.
Yeah, you talk about players that stood out, and I think Jude Bellingham in the number 10 is the standout, isn't he? He's an absolute
Yeah.
superstar in that position. And I
Mm.
know we've seen it with Real Madrid. I mean, Gareth Southgate's hesitant to really go that all out there, really, sometimes, isn't he? But he gave him that free reign and that control. And he loved getting forward, didn't he? And I think he was the
Mm.
pivotal person for every attacking good move that we made. And it was a joy to see. It was the centre of pretty much everything we did.
Yeah, and do you know what? We were talking during the game, weren't we? And the thing that England have always struggled with is when a team sets up with a low block. And in the
Yeah.
first half, in particular, there was so much of the game played with Italy with 11 men behind the ball. And England usually would really suffer with that. But in this game, it was nice because you saw the direct approach of someone like Bellingham and actually Rashford. They both were willing to run at players and take players on. And you saw what happens when you do that. So the first goal, obviously, Bellingham wins the penalty because he puts the defender in an uncomfortable position where he's got his back to goal and he's running after him. And that really worked. And then for both of the other two goals, it was a case of nipping the ball and countering really quickly and being direct. And it was really excellent to see such a young player dictating our entire attacking play, really. As wonderful as Kane was in so many moments, all of the good stuff really came through Bellingham. And that's such a huge amount of pressure for a young man. But he seemed to be absolutely loving it, didn't he? He was just geeing the
Yeah.
crowd up every 5 seconds. And it's interesting that now we've got these two players that don't play in England, where playing a game at Wembley is the closest they're going to be to a lot of their fans. And it looked like that meant a lot to Bellingham yesterday. And we were saying he should have been in the England team for a really long time. And Southgate has introduced him slowly. And now you would argue alongside Kane, he's the most important player we've got by some distance.
Yeah, I think, well, pass creation, chance creation, vision, control of the ball,
Mm.
creating space, finding space. Like, there's nothing he can't do. And I feel like that
Mm.
was all pivotal to a few England players actually having some of their best games in a while in an England shirt. Harry Kane, obviously, is a guaranteed source of goals, but I thought he
Mm.
really benefited from Bellingham's positioning and Marcus Rashford for his goal too.
Yeah.
He created that space for him, continued his run alongside him, and Rashford
Mm.
could just do what he's been known for years, but hasn't had a chance to do this season, and that's cut in and finished so brilliantly on his right foot. And that's a real weapon for England to have a player like Bellingham. I think we need to set that midfield up and protect that setup at all costs, really, because I think he's the centre of all chance creation for us, Bellingham.
Yeah, and it was such a mature way of handling that goal, Ethan, because
Mm.
you've got a player there who's full of confidence, young, on a big stage. You might think is trying to get his own name in the headlines, and actually finding the pass to Rashford in the first place was the right move. And then to continue that run, like you mentioned, such unselfish play. He was never going to get the ball, but it was such intelligent play. And that's not necessarily something you attribute to a young player who's kind of finding their feet on the international stage. But it seems like he's been established for a really long time now because he shows that maturity. And Rashford needed that, really. Let's
Yeah.
talk about someone who's not been in the greatest of form in his club side. We all talked on the podcast on Monday about whether or not we would even start Rashford in this game based on his Man United form. And he was excellent, I thought, in this game because he had those outlets. He had Kane and Bellingham moving for him, and he looked like his direct best. He didn't look lost in this game, which he has for Man United at times.
And I think the same could be said of Phil Foden as well. I felt like that enabled
Mm,
him to. And, he was another player I didn't know whether he would get a chance in this game, but,
yeah.
his favourite position is central. Clearly, with Jude Bellingham in the team, that's not going to happen. But even
Mm.
where he played, he created chances. He was there, it was an option. The amount of options we had going forward, I think, will definitely please Gareth Southgate. And I think England fans too, because I think that's one of the biggest frustrations for England fans is we're not finding that attacking threat as much as we could do or should do with the players we've got at our disposal.
Mm.
And I keep going back to him, but Jude Bellingham feels like the enabler of all of that. So yeah, attacking wise, really happy. I thought the goals were a real joy. Even the
Mm.
penalty, winning the penalty, I thought was a clear penalty for a
Yeah, it
start.
definitely was.
But it was putting himself in that position in the first place, which we don't
Mm.
do often enough, which is great. But what
Yeah.
about the other areas of the team as well? Is there anything you feel doubtful about or skeptical about? What worked for you and what didn't, I guess?
Well, just quickly before we do move away from the attack, also worth mentioning, as we did on Monday, that this was a performance without Bukayo Saka, who I actually
True.
think has been one of England's most consistent attacking threats for a really long
Hmm.
time. So that could get even better, that link up. So that's worth remembering when we're going into a tournament. I think the only areas for concern were what we kind of expected, that there is an air of rustiness about some of those players. So Calvin Phillips, I think, had a really good game in the end, but started the game very slowly. And the first 10 minutes, he said it himself. I thought his post-match interview was really interesting. I think he came across incredibly well. He's a very likable young man. And actually, he said himself that when he's not playing a lot of club football, the challenge he made to get his yellow card early in the game, it's a challenge you make when you're not quite at the pace of regular football. And that is definitely true. And I think we're a bit fortunate that we were playing an Italy side that's a little bit out of sorts in some ways. New manager, a few players missing. Their only recent result was against Malta. You never really know what that is to measure. And it was a completely different attacking lineup that played. Had we been playing someone like France, who we could come up against in the Euros, that rustiness in the first 10 minutes would be punished a bit more. And we saw it for the
Yeah.
Italy goal. John Stones hasn't started a game all season and he was sleeping. For Scamacca to have that much space, I think you naturally see a defensive flaw in England's game and you go to attribute it to Maguire. But Maguire's done the right thing. He's tracked his man to the near post, stopped him from getting a shot off, but you've got to rely on your defensive partner to get goal side of Scamacca. And he's got all the space in the world in the 6-yard box. That's just frightening. So I do worry about the game time of some of the integral players in Southgate's system. You cannot start games as slowly as England did, but the performance in the second half shows what they are capable of. So I do want to be a bit more positive about it.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern, I say concern, we've just, qualified it with real ease, unbeaten as well so far.
2 games to go.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like we shouldn't be as nitpicky as we are, but we're England fans and that's what we do. Have we got any central defensive options that you would have picked instead of Stones then for this game? Because I know we trust Maguire and Stones implicitly, but I was thinking Mark Gahey would have been a good bet. Him and Maguire actually linked up pretty well last time.
Yeah, and when Gahey came on, I think he played really well, and I think it's pretty sure now that he's cemented that spot as like the third choice. I don't know if I would have started Gahey. I was happy to see Stones start, and it was good for him to get 70 minutes in the bank, but it's easy to say that when it's gone well in the end. Had we lost the game because of that goal, then I probably would have been asking questions. But you have to get players like that into the team eventually, particularly when we know that the midfield is a little bit rusty as well, and you want to dominate the ball as much as possible, which England weren't really able to do. It was a very even split in possession. John Stones offers you so much in terms of retaining the ball and the way they wanted to play. Like the back four looks so calm when they're on the ball. Like Maguire, Stones, and Pickford were happy to pass the ball around themselves. So I'm happy to see Stones in there, and he'll only get better when his fitness improves. So yeah, I'm okay with Stones and Maguire. And I am okay with Maguire still. Because to be honest, I think he had a really good 90 minutes. He played 90 minutes, which would be great for him and his confidence. Man United are going to have to lean on him a bit more at the moment because they've got so many defensive injuries. And it could do him the world of good. I still think he should probably move on in the long term. But while he performs like that for England, fine. Like, keep him in the team. As long as he's fit enough, that's the difference, isn't it? So, yeah, a bit of match sharpness is missing from some of them, but they still managed to get a result against a good side.
Yeah, I think all in all, the excitement has probably started now for the Euros for the first time, which is good to see. There's still a few doubts for me about Gareth Southgate as a coach, but he keeps proving us wrong every single turn, doesn't he? Every time we doubt him, he does something like this. So that's off to Southgate and well played England.
Yeah.